Since May 2023, Nigeria has implemented bold reforms to avert a looming fiscal crisis. These efforts have brought about modest economic growth, rising foreign exchange reserves, and a healthier fiscal position. According to the latest World Bank Nigeria Development Update report, this signals that the country's economic reforms are starting to pay off a little. While the macroeconomic indicators show improvement, the report, titled Staying the Course: Progress Amid Pressing Challenges, recognizes that households are still grappling with inflationary pressures. Rising gasoline prices and devastating floods have pushed inflation up once again in September 2024. And it is this reality that the World Bank warns must be urgently addressed.
We know that many Nigerians are struggling with high inflation and rising cost of living. So, progress is real, but so are the struggles of many citizens, which the team actually will elaborate on later. The report's message is clear. We need to stick to the plan and keep moving forward. Turning back or pausing the reforms would only make things worse. Staying the course is essential for securing a better future for all Nigerians. But the effort must be accompanied by reforms enabling the private sector to create more and better jobs with targeted support to youth and the women.
So, where do we go from here? The report lays out a roadmap for Nigeria's government. First, the central bank must stay the course with its tight monetary policy until inflation is firmly under control. And the foreign exchange market must continue to reflect true market conditions. To reduce risk, the World Bank advises the government to maintain the removal of false subsidies and eliminate wasteful spending.
And the key message is really that in the macroeconomic and fiscal data, we are starting to see clear early indications that the policy direction that the government has been on is starting to show results with reduced fiscal pressure, with monetary policy stabilization, and with support to the process of really rebuilding confidence in the Naira. So the key message coming from that is the importance of staying the course on this reform direction, and we have a whole array of more specific recommendations for interested readers.
Reacting to the World Bank report, the Bauchi State Governor emphasizes that government policies must deliver tangible results for the people.
This thing should be well structured, and the achievement in that area should be tangible. Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, must benefit. It must reduce cost. Inflation has gone very high. It has made nonsense all the wages and salaries being collected.
As Nigeria navigates this crucial period of reform, the world watches to see how the country stays the course and manages the complex balance between growth, inflation, and the welfare of its citizens. Nkechi Nana, Arise News.
In response to the World Bank's Nigeria Development Update report, Central Bank Governor Olayemi Cardozo and Finance Minister Wale Edun reaffirmed their commitment to Nigeria's ongoing economic reforms. Governor Cardozo emphasized the need to stay the course with monetary tightening to stabilize the economy and curb inflation. He highlighted the central bank's decision to raise interest rates to a record 27.25%, stressing that preemptive rate hikes have kept inflation from spiraling out of control. Finance Minister Wale Edun echoed the central bank chief's sentiment, highlighting the significant fiscal savings from eliminating the fuel subsidy.
The key thing here is that for the first time in 40 years, the vexed issue of fuel subsidy and linked to it the foreign exchange subsidy costing 5% of GDP has gone. But if you imagine that we now have those funds back each month, each day, with market pricing of PMS, the government has money at the federal, state, and private levels. and local government levels for education, for housing, for infrastructure. After that, you need the growth, and it will come from agriculture, agro-industrial development zones at the first instance, and then housing and real estate. We do have, and we are going to roll out mortgages, long-term, 25 years, 20-year mortgages are relatively low interest rates, near single-digit interest rates by blending funds. And one key source is that we have long-term funds in this economy.
The confidence in the Naira is gradually returning as a result of the policies that we are already undertaking, which goes back to the whole issue of orthodox monetary policy. That is really what begins to encourage people to hold onto Naira. And for many of you, you may recall that when about a year ago, roughly a year ago, people had lost confidence, was literally lost confidence in the Naira, and that is a fact. And I believe that that has moderated and will continue to do so as long as we remain steadfast on the things we're doing. The PMS subsidy and the FX subsidy, which I hope everybody understands what I'm talking about here, the FX subsidy. Between those two, in 2022, I believe it was 75% of those two collectively accounted for 75% of the federation's revenue. Those two accounted for 75% of what goes into the federation. Now, by virtue of the fact that we've already closed that gap in exchange rate, we've already closed that gap. And by the way, we talk about the subsidy on petrol. The subsidy on foreign exchange was even larger. It was even larger than the subsidy on petrol. Here we are making a whole song and dance over fuel, and yet you have a bigger elephant in the room, which was foreign exchange, which was costing even more. So by virtue of the fact that we have closed that gap, and that there's no such thing as cheap dollars, and that gap has been closed, we've eliminated that particular cost. As we go along, our focus basically is, and it's important to say this, maintaining stability. That is critical. Maintaining stability. The central bank does not determine the exchange rate. Exchange rates are determined by fundamentals. But the central bank will work around the various policies that we bring out to ensure that the market functions efficiently, effectively, and that nobody comes in to take advantage of the system. And if they do, especially with respect to the authorized dealers, they be sanctioned accordingly.
Right, some important conversations there, Rufai. I don't know if you agree with the World Bank or not in terms of maintaining and staying on course. That's the main thrust of that message. Your take on the story?
I don't agree with the World Bank, and I'll tell you why. When the World Bank was set up after the Second World War ended in Bretton Woods, hence the name Bretton Woods Institution, the likes of Maynard Keynes was in that meeting and a couple of other top economists around the world. The essence of the bank and the lending arm of the bank was called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And it was deliberate because Europe had just come out of the war and Europe was devastated. Also, the Americans put something forward called the Marshall Plan of $14 billion to inject in the European economy. They didn't tell Europe to remove all the buffers of subsidy it has on people. They looked forward how to restart the manufacturing industry. As at the time, President Kennedy went to give the Ichef Berliner speech in Germany, manufacturing had started again. As of the 70s, Volkswagen was already a prominent car being sold in America. truth has to be said. These policies are going to destroy this economy. What you need is injection by the World Bank to be able to spoil the economy. Removing the only economic buffers is not the solution. Cure the bureaucratic bottleneck that bloats those buffers. Mr. Cardozo was talking about forex subsidy. What are the bureaucratic bottlenecks that bloat the forex subsidy? Can we remove it? Can we remove the bureaucratic bottlenecks around the subsidy with NNPC? Because they are quick to say, well, remove petroleum subsidy. They have not also talked about the 4 trillion NNPC expended on refineries that are not working, and some other gaps in NNPC's book. They have not talked about the 2 trillion that budget recently revealed that was padded in the budget. Also, as regards to Forex, let's look at the opportunity cost. You've removed Forex subsidies. The Naira now is touching 1,710. Manufacturers can't take advantage of it because, the other argument Mr. Cardozo had made in the past is that, if Nigeria was a high productive economy, we would take advantage of the weak Naira. But we are not a high productive economy because you have a structural problem with manufacturing. At the same time, subsidies have been removed on electricity. You have high interest rates. They can't compete effectively. You want to compete with companies in China that are getting loans at very small percentage point, 1 or 2%, and you are getting at over 30% here. So they can't compete. But what Mr. Cardozo should calculate is, look at the opportunity cost of the destruction on the economy by not paying those subsidies. Can we calculate it? Over 50% fall in the currency. A total destabilization of the standard of living of Nigerians. The World Bank also reports 129 people have been pushed into poverty and more being pushed by the day. It should also give us the empirical cost of not paying those subsidies and the opportunity cost problems that are arisen and the malaise on the economy. The GDP numbers are no longer the same. I think it was over 300 billion before. Now it's less than 300 billion. In calculative terms, also put in how much we've lost in GDP numbers. I yield the floor.
Okay, very quickly. Now, the World Bank has been very consistent in praising the reforms by the Tinubu administration. This is not the first time that they are making that statement. In 2023, when the government took over May 29, some reforms were introduced. Fuel price, for example. And that fuel price, pump price of fuel has gone from 198 naira per liter at the time President Tinubu assumed office to close to 1,000 naira in some parts of the country, over 1,000 naira in parts of the country. Now, exchange rate was about 600 naira to the dollar when the Tinubu government assumed office. Now, today, it's about 1,700 naira to the dollar as a result of, again, reforms. What has been the net effect of that? Hardship for the average Nigerian. Now, the World Bank has been consistent, as I said. Only recently, at the NESG ceremony, Indemit Gill, who is the lead economist, chief economist, his title, of the World Bank, also said, the same thing that they've now brought out in the development update yesterday, that Nigeria must sustain the reforms, and that it will take up to 15 years of sustaining these reforms, for us to be able to achieve anything. And now yesterday, they presented what they call Nigeria Development Update, which was tied to staying the course. Now, the World Bank and the Nigerian government are saying exactly the same thing, that, foreign reserve has gone off, fiscal policies are working, the macroeconomic policies should be sustained, but the World Bank adds the caveat, as it had done previously, that, we need to combat inflation, we need to do something about, what do they call it, cash transfer and buffers for the people. However, what has been the effect? Mr. Edun spoke and said, we have deregulated. Mr. Cardozo said, we're going to sustain this orthodox economic policy. In other words, we will do what World Bank tells us to do. Now, I think the other part of the panel discussion that they had must be stressed. And I think in this regard, the contribution of Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State, who literally debunked everything that they were saying. Like, what kind of reforms are you people talking about? What is the effect on the people? Unemployment is high. People are facing hardship. There is, despair within the country. And you say these policies are working. Of course, Gil quickly stood up and said, no, Bala Mohammed was not saying the right thing. The only thing that I saw in the conversation that may be useful will be as follows. The recommendation that they should audit the accounts of the NNPC to know what NNPC is owing the federal government. They should also find out what the federal government is owing the NNPC. That's the other side of it. They are saying also that FARC, should be investigated and all of that. Well, if there is transparency and accountability, those may seem like useful suggestions to address the opaqueness within the economy. But as for saying Nigerians deserve punishment, hardship, and suffering because of reforms. No, the World Bank is not communicating with Nigerians. See, all these are orthodox economics. We just textbook economics that goes at variance with reality. This is the point.